Right now, as we speak, Iran's Islamic regime is being hit from every conceivable direction. Massive explosions ripping through ammunition depots. Their fighter jets literally falling from the sky. Their currency in total freefall. Tens of thousands of their own citizens massacred in the streets, and still they're rising up in defiance. And now President Trump has just issued what may be his final ultimatum: 10 to 15 days. Make a deal or face the full fury of the United States military. 2 carrier strike groups, over 100 combat aircraft, 40,000 personnel, all converging on Iran right now as we speak. The Islamic Republic is staring into the abyss, and what we are witnessing may very well be the beginning of the end of this 47-year regime. Greetings, everyone. It is Livestream Friday. I am your host, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, enjoying yet another exciting and glorious day in the Trumpian golden age that you made possible back on November of 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. As always, we got a jam-packed show for you today. Our super chats are up, so feel free to send in your comments or your questions. It will be my privilege, as always, to read them and answer them during this live stream. Also, what if I told you that there's actually a hidden arbitrage opportunity in a $30 billion market? You heard that right, billion with a B. And everyday people with no special skills are quietly pocketing $5,000, $10,000, even $20,000 a month from it, all from their laptops. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but here's what's happening. There is a massive pricing gap in the used book market between what books sell for in one marketplace versus what they sell for in another marketplace. And the people who figured out how to exploit that gap, they're building real life-changing income. And here's what makes this truly different. You never touch a single book. No inventory in your garage. No shipping headaches. No leaving your house. Everything, and I mean literally everything, is done from your computer, from your browser. You find the opportunity, you click a few buttons, and other people handle all the logistics for you. And I'm not talking about some side hustle that earns a coffee money. I'm talking about a legit business that real people are running right now, many of them replacing their full-time income. Now, here's the exciting part. I'm personally hosting a free live training where we're going to pull back the curtain and show you exactly how this works. Step by step, no fluff, no theory, the actual system. I've done my homework on this, and I can't wait to walk you through it myself. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code and register now. Trust me, gang, you're not going to want to miss this. All right, let's dive right in here. What is happening in Iran right now is absolutely extraordinary. Frankly, it's unprecedented. We are watching in real time what appears to be nothing less than the total disintegration of the Islamic Republic. And I'm not exaggerating. When you look at the convergence of events over the last 3 weeks, there's frankly no other way to describe it. This regime is being hit from every direction, internally, externally, militarily, economically, diplomatically. It's a full spectrum collapse. And what's so stunning is how fast it's accelerating. So let's start with what just happened on Tuesday. A massive explosion ripped through the city of Shahryar, which is just west of Tehran, and it hit what are believed to be Islamic Revolutionary Guard ammunition and fuel depots. Now, this was not some little firecracker. We're talking about an explosion so powerful that the blast was actually caught on camera from miles away, as you could see there. The shock wave was reportedly enormous. And as of right now, we don't know of any casualties. Iranian officials have thus far provided no information on that one way or the other. But here's what's so significant. This was not a one-off. It was not an isolated incident. This was just the latest in an extraordinary wave of explosions that have been rocking Iran over the last several weeks. So, back on January 31st, explosions hit Bandar Abbas, where one person, 4-year-old girl, was reportedly killed and 14 were injured. Now, the regime claimed it was a gas leak. A local resident pointed out the building wasn't even connected to a gas network. On that same day, explosions in Avas killed 4 more people. Blasts were reported in Karaj and Parand as well. Then, on February 2nd, a massive fire engulfed a marketplace in Janadabad in northwest Tehran, with thick smoke visible across the entire city. February 6th, fires at a cold storage facility near the Azerbaijan border, and a fire at an army headquarters in Tehran. February 10th, fire at a Tehran power plant. February 11th, on the very anniversary of the 1979 Islamic Revolution, an explosion took out 2 armored vehicles in Sistan province. February 16th, major explosions at the Tabriz petrochemical refinery. And now, February 18th, the Shahryar ammunition depot goes up in flames. That's 8 major incidents in less than 3 weeks. Now, here's the million-dollar question. What is this? Is this sabotage? Is this internal resistance? Is this Israel, the Mossad? Is this the United States? Nobody's officially claiming responsibility here. Both Israeli and American officials have denied any involvement in the explosions. But I'll tell you this, when ammunition depots and military infrastructure blown up at this pace and frequency in a country that's simultaneously facing the largest protests in its history, a currency in total collapse, and the most massive U.S. military buildup in the region since the Iraq War, that ain't a coincidence. That's a regime that is being systematically dismantled. And then, as if to put an exclamation point in all of this, one of Iran's fighter jets, an F-4 Phantom. Okay, now if you know your military gear, or right away you're going to be like, huh? Yeah, that's a jet designed in the 1950s. It first flew in 1960. Well, it crashed during a nighttime training exercise near Hamadan. The pilot, who was reportedly the instructor of the Combat Crew Training Squadron, ejected but later died from his injuries. So once again, they're flying relics that can't even stay in the air. Their currency has collapsed to the point where a single US dollar is now worth approximately 1 billion rials. Their ammunition depots are literally exploding, and their own people are rising up against them. And of course, that's what this is ultimately about, the Iranian people. This week marks 40 days since the regime's massacre of its own citizens. We're in the period of what's called Cheh Khalem, which is a Shiite 40-day mourning period. And it's always been politically significant in Iran. It was the cycle of 40-day memorials that helped fuel the 1979 revolution itself. And now, ironically, that same cycle is turning against the very regime that the revolution created. So as I'm sure many of you know, the mass protests across Iran have been met with some of the worst atrocities in recent history. The regime unleashed its security forces on unarmed protesters. We have to remember the the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, as I understand, is fundamentally there to protect the regime. It's not there to fight a foreign invader. It's there to protect the regime from an internal uprising. And they're doing it. By multiple credible accounts, tens of thousands of people have been killed. Human rights organizations have confirmed this is the confirmation of at least 7,000 deaths, but there were reports from investigative journalists that put the number as high as 36,000. The Iranian government itself, through its Martyrs Foundation, has acknowledged over 3,000 deaths. That's their own number, which we can plausibly presume is a massive undercount. And yet, despite all of that, the Iranian people are still rising up. They're still revolting. They're still protesting. Videos verified by Radio Free Europe show mourners at the Shekhelam ceremonies in Tehran, Shiraz, Bushehr, Najabad, and a number of cities across the country chanting death to Khomeini, and 1,000 people stand behind every dead person. This is the single most significant uprising since the regime's founding in 1979. And again, for what appears to be very good reason. The nation is in an economic free fall. As I mentioned, the rial, the Iranian currency, it has lost 20,000%. That's not a typo, as it were. It's lost 20,000% of its value since 1979. They're in the midst of an unprecedented water crisis. 90% of their water reserves are gone. You have aquifers, which are underground, basically water reserves. And they used to be sort of one of the wonders of the world, as it were, in Persia. 90% of them are dry. They're gone. And the Bazari, that's the merchant class, which carries inordinate economic influence in Iran. It's one of the reasons why the revolution was successful in 79. The Bazari stood behind Ayatollah Khomeini. They supported the mullahs. Well, now they've turned them. They want the mullahs gone. So this is the single most serious uprising in 4 decades in Iran, with more people than ever demanding that this regime must go. And now enter the United States of America. Yesterday, President Trump issued what may be his most direct ultimatum yet. Speaking at the Border of Peace Summit yesterday, he said this.
Qatar, countries, nobody could have signed. You would have had that threat. Nobody could have had, you couldn't have had peace in the Middle East. So now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days. But this meeting today is proof with determined leadership, nothing is impossible.
So there you have it, 10 days. He actually elaborated that to 10 to 15 days. So either way, these next 2 weeks are going to be absolutely crucial here, critical. Now, the Wall Street Journal just dropped what might be the most significant national security story of the year yesterday. President Trump is weighing an initial limited military strike on Iran, designed to pressure Tehran into complying with his demands. If Iran retaliates, which they almost certainly would, then the United States would then be justified to escalate to a full-scale assault, targeting regime assets with the explicit aim of toppling the Islamic regime. And the military assets to do it are already in position, right? 2 carrier strike groups, the USS Gerald Ford and the USS Abraham Lincoln, more than 100 combat aircraft, including F-35s, F-22s, F-16s. No, these were not designed in the 1950s. A dozen destroyers and cruisers. The Sufan Center estimates that once the Ford arrives, the USS Gerald Ford arrives, which should be this weekend, troop levels will reach 40,000 personnel. CBS News is reporting that senior national security officials briefed the president that the military could be ready to strike as early as this weekend. Now, that said, to be clear, remember, Trump is always playing chess. That 10 to 15-day deadline, I would argue, functions more as a pressure tool to maximize Iran's sense of urgency at the negotiating table, particularly since Iran just agreed to submit a written proposal within 2 weeks, rather than a literal countdown to war, given that the USS Gerald Ford carrier strike group hasn't even fully arrived in the region yet. The concern is that Iran is deliberately dragging its feet through these negotiations. It's trying to wait out the Trump administration and hope beyond hope that a Kamala 2.0 could come back to power in 2028, and they can carry on with business with this Obama-like appeasement. But by publicly floating limited strikes via the Wall Street Journal, all the while simultaneously keeping the Geneva channel open, that's where the negotiations are happening through an Oman envoy, Trump is essentially creating a deal or else dynamic where the credible threat of force does the strategic work, much like his, fire and fury rhetoric back in 2017. Remember with North Korea and Kim Jong-un, my button is bigger than yours. Well, that ultimately led to summits rather than missiles. So is that what's really going on here? I mean, in the end, we do have to be very clear. Why is the United States even involved in this in the first place? And are we about to see George Bush 2.0 and another prolonged Middle East disaster, boots on the ground and all? That's exactly what we're about to find out. But first, gang, if you're just joining us, our super chats are up. So feel free to send in your comments and questions. I'll be happy to answer them right here on our live stream. It'll be my honor and my privilege. Also, one of the things that's happening in Iran, with all the things that are happening in Iran right now, I got to admit that there was a bit of a stretch not that long ago where I wasn't sleeping that well, right? I'd be lying there in the wee hours, 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, running the numbers, right? So my IRA, my 401k, everything I built up, I realized was tied to paper money, right? Tied to cash. And, I was wondering, honestly, if the value was going to hold up while inflation ate away at it. I mean, remember, whatever cash you had in 2020, it's lost about 20% of its value. 20% of its value. That anxiety, that overthinking, it gnawed at me. And I kept asking myself, seriously, am I actually prepared? Or am I just hoping I am? This is my life savings we're talking about. Everything I've worked for, and I knew there had to be something else I could do to protect it. But I didn't know what. What could I do to protect the devaluation of my dollars that are basically rotting away in their savings? So I did what I always do. I researched, right? That's what I am, your Patriot professor. So I talked to people who actually know this stuff. And that's when I found Augusta Precious Metals. And gang, I got to be honest, they taught me things I didn't even know were possible. I had no idea you could hold physical gold and silver inside your IRA or your 401k. It's not some loophole or gimmick. It's been in the tax code for decades. 100% legal way to bring real stability back into your retirement. That conversation changed everything for me. Once you understand your options and see how much gold has gained in value over those last 6 years, right, since 2020, I mean, the anxiety shuts off. You stop running the numbers at 2 a.m. I've spoken with Augusta's education team multiple times now. I've met Devlin Steele, their director of education. He's amazing. He's an expert in multipolarity and the like. Well, these guys are the real deal. And they know how to explain it so you actually understand. So here's what I recommend you do. The same thing I did. Go to turleybuysgold.com or text Turley to 35052. That's 35052. Talk to an educator at Augusta. No pressure. No pressure. They're patriots just like us. They're there to help. Tell them what keeps you up at night. And tell them Dr. Steve sent you. Now, they'll cover up to 10 years of your custodial and depository fees. Again, they're patriots just like us. They've got your back. So listen, I've done the research for you. These guys at Augusta taught me everything I needed to know. They're amazing. This is the conversation that gave me my sleep back. Text Turley to 35052. Tell them I sent you. This is how you protect what you built. This is how you sleep soundly at night. All right. let me give you the bigger geopolitical picture here, because this is where it gets quite fascinating. What we're watching unfold here is a masterclass in how you dismantle a hostile regime without repeating the catastrophic mistakes of the past. Hello, George W. Bush, right? This is something I want to give President Trump enormous credit for. Remember Iraq, okay? W went in. He declared from day one that he wanted regime change. And then he had to sell the war to the world using intelligence that turned out to be fabricated. The whole thing was backwards. They had the conclusion and went looking for the evidence. And then after toppling Saddam, they had no plan for what came next. They didn't even have a basic understanding of the Sunni-Shia split. The result was a 20-year quagmire that cost trillions of dollars and thousands of American lives. Trump is doing the exact opposite. He's starting with diplomacy. He's engaged in multiple rounds of negotiations, 5 rounds last year through Witkoff and Kushner, and now 2 rounds of renewed talks this year in Oman and Geneva. Again, if you don't know, bottom line, the Trump administration is making 4 demands of Iran. This is why we're involved with Iran right now. Bottom line, 4 reasons. Number 1, no nukes. That's the fundamental one. No nukes, no nuclear weapons program. That Iran must fully dismantle its enrichment capabilities that were radically damaged by the June bombing. Now, the reason why that's so key is not because of what Sean Hannity tells you. They're going to bomb Israel and all, they're going to launch nukes on Israel. That's not what's going on here. When you get the bomb, the geopolitical board changes. Now you get to call the shots in your region. When you got a bomb, the escalation ladder disappears. So the escalation ladder, bottom line, says that as long as you have the ability to escalate above your opponent, you'll always win. It's a physics theory, actually. It's more than just even a strategic theory. So bottom line is the one who occupies the higher rungs of the ladder always has the leverage and always wins. When you have nukes, you get rid of the escalation ladder. Now it's mutually assured destruction. Now it's a deal with us, or we wipe out LA, or Chicago, or whatever, New York. I mean, it's like, oh, okay, now the game changes. So if Iran gets the bomb, then they get to call the shots in the region. It's that simple. And as far as the Trump administration is concerned, that cannot be allowed to happen. Okay, so that's the bottom line. No nukes, because the bottom line they cannot accept a Middle East where Iran becomes the dominant pole, the dominant power. So that's number 1. Number 2, they have to constrain ballistic missiles. So Iran has to accept limits on the range and scope of its ballistic missile program, which the United States views as inseparable from the nuclear threat. 3, they have to end sponsorship of their proxies, their terrorist proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah. And then 4, they have to stop brutalizing their own people. So again, fundamentally, Trump's stated rationale for confronting Tehran centers on preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. That's bottom line. So June's Operation Midnight Hammer, in the end, it was a very successful operation, but in the end, it only delayed Iran's nuclear capabilities by several years. The stockpile of near weapons-grade uranium remains intact, and it's currently unmonitored by the IAEA. Iran's refusal to accept zero enrichment, that's, again, Trump's core demand, means the nuclear clock is still ticking. It got set back dramatically, but it's still clicking. So that's ticking, I should say. So that's the fundamental driving force here for confronting Tehran. The opportunity, that's the key here. The opportunity for that confrontation is the fact that the regime right now, as we speak, has never been weaker. It's bleeding. It's bleeding big time. So Trump sees a once-in-a-generation window of opportunity here. Iran's regional proxy network, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, they've been devastated particularly by Israeli operations. The Houthis have been hit by the United States. Iran's economy is in a free fall. The regime is facing the single largest uprising in their 47-year history. The Ayatollah Khamenei is 86 years old, no clear succession plan. We may never get an opportunity like this again. And frankly, Trump sees the Shiite regime as a Cold War relic, a hangover from a world gone by. It's the single most destabilizing force in the region. It's condemned by both Israelis and Arabs alike. It stands in the way of a full implementation of the Abrahamic Accords that would bring so much prosperity to the region. And Trump sees resolving this 47-year-old Cold War with Iran that's troubled every single president since its inception, since Carter. He sees that as a very worthy goal for a peaceful and prosperous world. And to that end, Trump has given Iran every opportunity to come to the table. And each time, the regime has publicly and loudly rejected the deal. Now, behind closed doors, we're hearing it's a different story. They are willing to negotiate. But publicly, Khamenei himself, just this last Monday, rejected zero enrichment. He rejected limiting their ballistic missiles. And then he had the audacity to say the United States Navy is going to be sent to the bottom of the sea. Now, that may be exactly what Trump wants. He needs the regime to reject the deal publicly, loudly, and repeatedly, so that if and when military action comes, the legitimacy is already established, right? This isn't Tony Blair running around with a dodgy dossier. This isn't Bush coming up with fabricated reason. This is the enemy literally telling the world they want nuclear weapons and they want to destroy America and Israel. That's the rhetoric. You don't need to fabricate intelligence when the enemy is doing your PR for you. And look at the diplomatic chess that's happening around this. It's fascinating. Armenia and Azerbaijan, two nations that have been at each other's throats for decades. Remember, Trump negotiated peace between them? Well, guess now why? He's somehow gotten both of them to cooperate with the United States and provide military staging areas right on Iran's northern border. I mean, talk about 4D chess. And then just yesterday, a car exploded right outside the U.S. Embassy in Yerevan, Armenia. The investigation's ongoing, but the timing is obviously suspicious, given that Armenia just became a key logistical hub for potential U.S. operations against Iran. Meanwhile, Iran and Russia are conducting much touted joint naval exercises in the Strait of Hormuz, the Maritime Security Belt 2026 project, they call it. And that much touted joint exercise was supposed to project strength until we found out that, according to defense experts, the Russian presence amounted to essentially one warship. One. That's Russia's contribution to defending Iran. They're throwing them a bone, but they're making it very clear, hey, if hostilities start, sorry, you're on your own. China, which usually participates in those exercises, it wasn't even involved this year. Even Iran's supposed allies are quietly backing away. And as if the signal weren't clear enough, the European Union officially designated the Islamic Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization on the very same day these naval exercises began. So let me lay this out for you in big picture terms. What we're seeing as we speak going into the weekend is the convergence of four forces that are simultaneously squeezing the Islamic regime. Number one, the internal revolt. The Iranian people have risen up in the most significant protest movement since 1979 It does appear tens of thousands have been massacred. Again, there's different numbers here or there, but there's been several thousand have been massacred. And yet the Shehalah memorials this week show the movement is far from dead. In fact, the historical pattern from the 79 revolution itself is that 40-day memorial cycles escalate into revolutionary momentum. The regime knows this. That's why they're terrified. Number two, the economic collapse. The rial has gone into hyperinflation, making everyday survival nearly impossible for ordinary Iranians. When your currency collapses, it doesn't just destroy savings, it destroys the regime's ability to pay its own security forces. And when you can't pay the men with the guns, that's when regimes tend to fall. Number three, the mysterious wave of explosions, right? 8 major incidents in 3 weeks, targeting military infrastructure, ammunition depots, petrochemical facilities, and power plants. Whether this is sabotage, or Israeli intelligence operations, or simply the natural deterioration of an isolated, sanctions-ravaged military, the effect is the same. The regime's ability to project power is being systematically degraded. And then number 4, the American military buildup. 40,000 troops, 2 carrier strike groups, over 100 combat aircraft, all positioned and ready, with a president who's just given a 10 to 15-day deadline and a Wall Street Journal report confirming that limited strikes could come within days. When you put all 4 of those together, what you see is not just a crisis for the Islamic Republic. What you see is the end of an era that began in 1979, when that revolution hijacked one of the oldest, most magnificent ancient civilizations in human history. Iran, Persia, is one of the great civilizations of the world. The Persian Empire, the poetry of Rumi and Hafez, the stunning architecture, the contributions to mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. For 47 years, for more and more Iranian people, as far as they're concerned, that civilizational inheritance has been held hostage by the Shiite regime. More and more Iranians want to return to their monarchy. The lion and sun flag, banned since 1979, is being waved in demonstrations from Tehran to Isfahan. This is a complete rejection of the Islamic Republic itself and a return to Iran's civilizationalist identity. In many respects, many are calling Iran's monarchist turn a civilizational immune response. The population rejecting an ideological state that nearly destroyed the material and cultural basis of 2,500 years of Persian civilization. And instead, they're reaching for the very constitutional monarchy that historically bridged their ancient identity with modern statehood. The Iranian monarchy built dams, railroads, industrial capacity, whereas the Islamic Republic appears to be simply parasitical. They've only destroyed the water table while funding Hezbollah. Iranians returning to the Shah aren't just nostalgic. They're recognizing that civilizational continuity requires material sustainability, not ideological purity. What many people don't realize is the founder of the Pahlavi dynasty, Reza Shah, back in the early 20th century, named the dynasty Pahlavi after the historic term for the Persian language as it was written during the Sasanian Empire that ruled during the 3rd to 7th centuries. It's one of the great pre-Islamic Persian empires that ruled the region before the Arab conquest and Islamization. So when Reza Shah founded his dynasty in 1925, he deliberately chose the name Pahlavi as the dynasty's name, making a direct linguistic connection to that pre-Islamic Persian golden age. So he wasn't claiming to restore the Sasanians. He was claiming to be their legitimate heirs, but for the modern age. So Iran's monarchy is really a perfect example of this kind of archaeofuturist, civilizationalist world that's rising all around us. And thus we shouldn't be surprised to see a growing sentiment among Iranians who want to return to the Shah as the most prosperous and civilizationally rich path forward. And now, the forces of liberation from within Iran and from without are converging. Trump himself said it. Regime change seems like that would be the best thing that could happen here. And U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, is actively reaching out to Iranian opposition groups, urging them to unite behind a viable alternative, with many rallying behind Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. This is the moment, gang. This is the moment where 47 years of tyranny meets the unstoppable force of a people who've decided enough. And behind them stands the full might of the United States under a president who doesn't bluff. Over to you. I want to hear what you have to say as Josh, our moderator, puts together your questions. Did you know that U.S. life expectancy peaked at 78 years back in 2014? And global life expectancy is declining for the first time in 30 years because people are aging faster than ever before. And this is largely due to all the toxins in the air, chemicals in our soil and food, and other external factors that are new to us. Now, what most people don't know is that we can actually fight aging on a cellular level. Scientists have discovered that kimchi actually slows the aging process of human cells, helping to protect them and delay aging. The power of nature can outweigh the power of pharmaceuticals without the nasty side effects. And now you can get all the benefits of kimchi in a simple capsule with Kimchi One. Now, I take Kimchi One every single morning, and I absolutely love it. Each capsule delivers over 900 probiotic strains plus antioxidants and enzymes that support your digestion, metabolism, and skin health from the inside out. So as we age, we become more, susceptible to microbial threats, harmful viruses and bacteria. But the beauty is that Kimchi One is a natural antimicrobial, helping your body fight off harmful bacteria, viruses, and even toxins while boosting immunity and energy. And best of all, Kimchi One's 100% made right here in America. It's all natural, non-GMO. So what do? What I do. Support your gut, protect your cells, and feel younger every single day with Kimchi One from Brightcore. Today, you can get an exclusive offer by clicking on the link below. Just use code Turley for 25% off your entire order, or for an even better deal. This is what I do. Call my friends at Brightcore. They'll love you. They're patriots, just like they're Maha to the core. Give them a phone call, and you're going to get up to 50% off your order and free shipping. Give them a call right now at 888-597-0233. That's 888-597-0233. All right, what do we got, Josh? Thoughts on the tariff ruling in the Supreme Court? Did they rule? That's from The Rock. Let me see. While I am going here. I should give you my thoughts and then see how accurate it is. That would be good. But right, just in legal has a massive toolbox of additional tariff options. Oh, so they knocked it out, right? Must act to enshrine breaking use. Shoots down President Trump's sweeping tariffs. 6-3 ruling. Yeah, that's too bad. Kavanaugh wrote a 63-page dissent. Roberts, Gorsuch, and Barrett joined the liberals. Billions of dollars would now be. No. Oh, God. Our side never, ever, ever can stop dooming. No, President Trump has, and my namesake Jonathan Turley has pointed out, he has a massive toolbox of additional tariff options that he used without any problem in his first term. So he can do that. What he did is he used it more as a national security issue. I guess the Supreme Court's arguing, no, you don't get to use tariffs as a form of national security. I would disagree with that, obviously, but nevertheless, yeah, that is I think he's going to they'll immediately find other ways of justifying these tariffs, but they're not going to be paying back all this money. And do not doom scroll. Never doom. This is the perfect day for doomers to come on out from under their rocks and just do everything they can to discourage you. Don't listen to it in a heartbeat. But there was always a plan B behind this, and I think the plan B will be just fine. Dr. Steve, is the Jones Act obsolete? Boy, you guys you are really testing me here as if I was requiring that all goods transported water between U.S. carried on ships or U.S. built. Oh, yeah. So, no, I think that's still there. Am I federal statute? So it's a federal statute. It's a national security issue. It's a federal statute that requires that all goods transported by water between U.S. ports be carried on ships that are U.S. built, U.S. owned, at least 75% crewed by U.S. citizens. Again, it's a national security issue, and it's one of the things that's kind of it's making it harder for us to compete with China on, because China has a massive a trade fleet. I mean, absolutely huge. And then they're able to build ships much faster than we can. As a matter of fact, I think one port in China, one shipping manufacturing port can build more ships than we build entirely all year across the board in the United States. So it's one of the things that kind of actually slows things down for us. But no, I don't see the Jones Act. I'm not seeing any evidence that the Jones Act is dead or obsolete. I want my mommy. Oh, great and learned professor. Oh, this is ROT Core. AOC and Whitmer struggle in Munich. Mamdani and Hochul fighting. Bears leaving Chicago. I've asked before, and I'll ask again. 48 weeks later, and is it the worst week for Democrats? Yeah. It's bad. So AOC and Whitmer both failed spectacularly on the world stage. That was their Olympic moment, and they fell. Right? They got put into the ice arena. This is their figure skating Olympic moment, and they crashed and burned. They fell on every jump. They fell. I mean, most particularly AOC. That commercial of her going for 20 seconds will be played over and over and over and over. It'll be a meme. Today, Junior. Right. So no, she's shot. Mamdani and Hochul is so pissed at Mamdani right now, because bottom line, Mamdani ran around making all of these promises to his socialist faithful in New York, which is only about a little over 50% of the Democrat Party in New York. Remember, socialism and wokeness in general splits the left and unites the right, generally speaking. There's just not enough right in New York City to matter, to be consequential. But he ran around making promises that that could only be paid for by tax increases signed by their governor, Kathy Hochul. So income tax increases are mandated by New York state constitution to only be able to go through Albany. So he knew when he was talking about we're going to raise taxes, we're going to have a wealth tax, we're going to have all these income taxes. He knew not only were his numbers wrong, but he knew he himself couldn't raise taxes. He couldn't do it. Now, this again he got pushback a lot from Andrew Cuomo, but he brushed it off and said, "Oh no, we're going to be able to do it. I've already talked to everybody in the legislature, in the state legislature. They're going to do it." Well, it turns out no, they're not, because they can't afford to further hemorrhage their wealthy residents that have been leaving New York in droves. And then that takes us to what's happening in Chicago. For the last 5 years, the Bears, company or whatever your corporation have been trying to negotiate a new stadium, and because Chicago is so utterly inept and corrupt, they couldn't get anywhere, and so they went to a neighboring red state, Indiana. And what does Indiana say? Sure, yeah, we could do that for you, no problem. Boom, and they were like, "That's it, we're out of here." So again, it'll be something akin to like, you know, Giants or Jets or playing in Jersey or the Washington Redskins. Hate that nonsense. Whatever I don't even know what their name is now. I pay no attention. Playing in Maryland or in Langley or whatever. So they'll still be Chicago Bears, but just again in name only. The world is shifting away from blue states and it's moving over to red states. And what we're seeing in terms of the dysfunctionality in New York and the incompetence from AOC and Whitmer is a perfect example of why that's happening. Rock Dog Patriot, Dr. C, when are we going to see Bill Gates, Bubba Clinton, the Hill Beast, and others finally arrested? We know the crimes were committed. I know I'm impatient, but come on. Charge them in Florida and let's get the trials for crimes against humanity moving. I'm with you. Yeah, let's get it moving. Well, so both Bill and Hillary are going to have to, they have to testify. They've agreed to testify before a congressional hearing. It looks like it's going to be private. That's what they wanted. I wouldn't be surprised if Hillary spilled the beans, especially against Bill. I wouldn't be surprised. Look, her career's dead. Her political career is dead. She's just a bitter old woman. And I frankly wouldn't be surprised if that bitterness turned on all the Epstein files. And I don't mean the FILES. I mean these weird, worshipers of Epstein. Bill Gates just he canceled an appearance at the New Delhi AI International Summit. That was a big, big summit. And he was supposed to speak there. Why, I don't know. Again, what the guy has any knowledge of AI? Well, I guess he's the big tech mogul with Microsoft and so on. But he canceled, and he canceled because of the Epstein fallout. And we're just seeing one. Resignation after another, and then of course now our first arrest, a royal. Now, in fairness, he wasn't arrested because of what he necessarily did. What Giuffre had accused him of doing. Got arrested literally for a kind of treason of sharing confidential information and compromising with Epstein and compromising the integrity of his office that he was holding, but as being a chairman of the trade and so forth. So we'll see. Yeah, we would just have to see. I'm with you. But again, don't black pill over this. Just keep going. We're winning. We have the power, and we're just waiting for things to flesh out. And they are starting to flesh out. The arrests have started, and it's it's literally the King of England's brother is the first one that gets officially arrested. Pretty insane. August 10th, thoughts on Supreme Court striking down the tariffs. I'm sure the administration was prepared, but what are the other options to protect? I had a list here. Let me see if I can find the list for you guys for tariff options, because there are several, actually. So that's why I do not listen to the doomers. I don't know what it is with right-wing doomers. I gotta find a model for that and put that in my thinking at some time. Let's see. Tariff options. Where are we? Supreme Court. Tariff options. I think we got give me a sec, guys, while I do my lookup. Why would it be in that file? Let me see. Let me just check this. Nope. Okay, check. My search my word program has been horrible of late. One more time, tariff options. Let's see. This one might work. Okay. Yeah, I think this is good. Okay. So we've been talking about this for several weeks. So this is in some of my notes here, that the Supreme Court may indeed, as a matter of fact, they were likely to strike down Trump's tariffs based on the fact that he imposed them through the IEEPA, which stands for the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. And that was just simply the fastest, swiftest way you could impose tariffs. And it did appear that SCOTUS was a bit skeptical over that. So if they did strike it down, which we just found out they did today, Trump could use several alternative options. Number one, he can use different statutory authorities that explicitly mention tariffs, such as Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, which he used for steel and aluminum tariffs in his first term. So that's Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. There's Section 122 of the Trade Act, which allows up to 15. So there's a cap on it. It allows up to 15% duties for 150 days to address international payment issues like trade deficits. So it's just basically a way of getting some money back when there's a deficit. There's also what's known, so that's second option. There's also what's known as the president's Section 301 authority. So he can pursue tariffs through more traditional mechanisms that have withstood judicial scrutiny in the past, though these involve longer investigation periods and more procedural requirements that have to go through Congress. And he deliberately bypassed Section 301 precisely because of just simply how dysfunctional Congress is. And of course, Congress itself could pass legislation explicitly granting Trump his tariff authority. But again, Congress is dysfunctional. So when all said and done, he can go with Section 232, the Trade Expansion Act, or Section 122 of the Trade Act, both of which will give him tariff authority and bring in that revenue. The People's Pundit on X is concerning regarding the polling data. Can you please clarify? Thanks. Yeah, that's Rich, our good friend Rich Barris. He is Rich. Rich is really flipped out. He's really concerned about things. I don't know what's going on, to be honest with you. I don't know what's going on. So when I followed Rich's work for years, it's always been stellar. There was a little hiccup in 2022 in the midterms. A lot of people were very upset at him because he predicted that, if I recall, he predicted the Republicans were going to do a lot better than they did, and he didn't take into consideration the low to no propensity vote, or at least in his analysis of his polls, the low to no propensity voter that we have a very hard time dragging out and voting during a midterms. What the last time in 2024, what we found is that his polling, as well as Mark Mitchell's polling of Rasmussen, tended to align with other top stellar pollsters. So we're talking Insider Advantage, RMG, Atlas Intel. And the problem we're experiencing right now, and again, we're still months away from the midterms. Let's be honest. We're not even at the summer yet. But the problem here right now is his polling radically diverges from what they're seeing. They're seeing the Democrats as very weak right now going into the midterms, whereas he's seeing them as very strong, like double-digit lead, right, in a generic ballot. And then he's using that as a platform to sound the alarm with Trump. Some think he's going way overboard in terms of alarm sounding, almost going like full Drudge. right? Remember what happened to Drudge during Trump's first year? He basically turned on Trump. And then the problem is when you turn on Trump, nobody listens to you anymore. So there's a different way of doing this. There's a different way of, persuasion if you're concerned that perhaps Trump is harming the coalition, particularly with his emphasis on the Middle East, which is where it really started for Rich back in June of last year and the first bombing of Iran. But again, his polling diverged from the vast majority of polling that we're seeing from the very stellar polling outlets. So right now we're just seeing, and I like how you presented that, and Rich is polling is alarming, but it's his polling that's alarming. It's not all these other polls. So what we had aligning back in 2024 is now diverging. So what I then do is I bring in other factors. I bring in other corroborating constituents in all of this. So I look at, for example, the latest, a number of the latest special elections. And Republicans actually have been winning the majority of them. I forget how many special elections there have been thus far, but it's something like it's Republicans 7-6. So I think there's been 13 or so. Republicans have won 7, Democrats have won 6. So Republicans are actually ahead in the amount of special elections. And then when we look at like the latest one in Georgia that I reported on Wednesday in the heart of Georgia, where there was extraordinary turnout for the Republican candidate. When we look at the turnout, we really are only seeing more or less a +2, +3 Democrat electorate, maybe a +1 Democrat electorate, which aligns with what Atlas Intel and TIPP and Insider Advantage, RMG, that's what they're seeing. And then I compare, and then Democrats ain't going nowhere with a 2-3 point advantage in the midterms. They ain't going. They're not going anywhere with a presidential election, because again, so much of those numbers are coming from very situated, geographically specific coastal, regional, metropolitan, cosmopolitan areas, L.A., New York, or in Midwest Chicago. But the vote is spread out for Republicans, so they're able to, in an electoral system, they're able to beat the Democrats every time. They have to be way ahead. They have to be 6, 7, 8 points ahead or so. And then I look at the voter registration, and the voter registration numbers are still just crushing. The latest numbers just came out of Nevada. Remember, Nevada was blue. The majority of voter registrants in Nevada were Democrat when Trump won Nevada. It is now red by several thousand, and it keeps growing. They're growing their margin in Nevada. The one state, unfortunately, that's kind of reversed over the last couple of weeks is Pennsylvania. We'll have to keep an eye on it. It's done that a few times. There's still a stubborn eastern wing, but it's in fairness, Seth Keshel said it's gained in about 2/3. Democrats have gained about 2/3 of their counties. We're still far and ahead in the lead in terms of voter registrations, but there was a couple weeks setback. I mean, I'm just giving you the full data. So I just look at all of that. I look at the 30 states that measure voter registration by party, and the Republicans are crushing it in literally almost all 30 states. I look at the special elections, and the Republicans have been winning the majority of them. And then I look at these very equally accurate pollsters, and they're only showing about a +2, +3% advantage for Democrats at best, maybe +4. And then there's Rich, right? So there's a People's Pundit. So maybe he's right. Maybe he caught something that nobody else did. But that's sort of the map that I'm using right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if the closer we get to the midterms, the polls start tightening up for everyone. So we'll see. Will O'Toole, welcome back. Will the recent deals made by the Prime Minister of Canada with China be the real catalyst for Alberta to align with the United States? That's a great question, Will. We'll have to see. Again, just Albertans have just really, they just seem to have increasingly had it. They just see Ottawa as in a political paralysis and an ideological paralysis. And that paralysis is costing them lots of money in more than one way, right? We're not just talking about equalization payments. We're also talking about them stifling and frustrating, oil pipelines, especially with the United States. The United States is upset about that because they want to be completely independent of any volatility in the Middle East. And so Venezuela in the south and Alberta in the north are key to that. So, so we'll have to see. Again, it's hard to leave a country. If you've grown up with the identity of being Canadian, just like, for Texans, if you've grown up being American, it's very hard to just say, all right, we're going to leave. We're done. But you do have to get to a point. Again, Quebec came very, very close. 1 percentage point back in the 90s, right? 96. So, as I understand it, support for separation in Alberta is higher today than it was at the same time in the Quebec referendum. And if the argument can be made that Ottawa is unfixable, that the Conservative Party is just it just doesn't have the numbers to win anymore, especially with the collapse of the National Democrats. I think the strong argument made, at the very least, we're going to send them a message. At the very least, we're going to send them a message. But you're already seeing tons of articles coming out. Oh, separation's illegal. It's unconstitutional. They can't do it. So they're worried. The elite are worried. They're very concerned about those long lines that they're seeing to sign that petition. Franz, Dr. Steve, we got an Iranian population in Southern California of about 500,000, and LA hosted a huge demonstration in support of regime change. So why are there no polls reflecting this? Good question, Franz. I don't know the answer to that. So in the same way, for example, that there were polls among expat Venezuelans in the United States in their support of Maduro's arrest, which again, we have to remember, Latinos were the in terms of demographics, voting demographics, had the highest support for Trump's removal of Maduro. So it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. I know maybe it's just because it's not as big. 500,000 is pretty impressive. That's the size of Staten Island. 500,000 isn't, and in a single region. I don't know. I don't know the answer. The only thing that comes to my mind is that they're not as politically consequential as the Latino vote, or shifting in terms of the way the Latino vote swung to Trump so overwhelmingly in 2024. Mitchell, due to the Supreme Court ruling, how do you think we can negotiate with other countries now that we can't tariff them? Okay, so you can't tariff them. So hopefully you heard my earlier answer. We can't tariff them through the IEEPA. That's the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That's what Trump used to immediately impose tariffs. He can use what's called Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. That's what he used in his first term. And he can use Section 122 of the Trade Act. The difference is that Section 122 he can do right away, but it imposes a 15% cap. So he can't go above 15%, and he can only do it for about 150 days. I'm assuming he can renew it right afterward as well. So they were prepared for this. They knew this. Now they did everything they could to pressure the Supreme Court not to do this. But they're playing 4D chess, and they've got Section 232 and Section 122 all ready to go. Simple logic. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard failed because it was always in a state of revolution and never took on running a nation. Hence why leftists always fail In the end, interesting. That's very interesting. Simple logic. A very, very nice extension of your tag name. I think that's exactly what's happening with Mamdani. Is Mamdani is finding that that galvanizing people through an ideological vision is fundamentally different than the institutional structural program of management and maintenance. They are very, very different things. It's a left brain, right brain kind of thing, if you think about it, isn't it? And so that's what makes a great entrepreneur. That's why I'm infatuated in many respects. Well, maybe it's too strong of a word, but I'm very impressed with Elon Musk because I think he has both sides of the brain operating, just this extremely visionary side, but also an extremely technical side and management oriented side of things. So you've got to have both. And that's what makes the MAGA movement so extraordinary. Again, Trump is very much that way as well. He has the nationalist populist, now increasingly civilizationalist vision for the United States, and he's got the management entrepreneurial expertise to implement it. So I think you're onto something. I think if you don't have both sides, and rarely do leftists have, even Jordan Peterson talked about that leftist psychology is rarely management oriented. Even among the CEOs and so forth, they buy into the wokeness just as more or less a marketing gimmick. Once wokeness is out, they're gone. They'll throw wokeness out right along with the change of sentiment across the country. Leslie, thank you so much for the super sticker. Very kind of you. Brian, my good friend, SCOTUS just overturned the tariff case. Do you have any sense about what comes next? It seems as if the Dems have hamstrung the administration, at least in this way. Yeah, I don't. We'll see. But hopefully you heard the answer earlier. He's got Section 232, the Trade Expansion Act, that he's used before, that he could use immediately. And he's got Section 122, the Trade Act, that he can use immediately. The only problem with that is that it does put a 15% cap on the tariffs. So if he wants to raise the tariffs 100%, he can't do that. He'd have to go through Section 232. The easiest, fastest way of doing it was through the IEEPA. That's the International Emergency Economic Power Act. And the Supreme Court believed that that act did not entail tariffs, unilateral tariffs being exercised from the executive branch. Les Moore, I'm hearing Iran has had sleeper cells in the U.S. for years. Have you heard anything? I haven't. I wouldn't be surprised for sure. You know. MAGA 24, Dr. Steve, how was your Florida vacation? Oh, lovely, lovely. Hopefully you guys like the videos from there. I found, we stayed at this kind of resort area, and just there's a lot of people around, and I'm talking politics and I don't want to bother them. So I just found this really lovely little side street. I was able to just kind of walk around, and it really was absolutely lovely. We had a beautiful time. We did it. I don't know if you remember, we did it last year. So when JD Vance gave his Munich speech, that was a real barn burner, freaked everybody out at NATO, the Munich Security Council. It was the exact same gathering that Marco did his speech at last week. Well, I was there in Key West. We spent the entire week in Key West that time for that JD Vance speech. So it was so cool seeing the Marco speech happening right around the same time. And again, we were in the same areas. And this time we rented a car from Miami, and we drove down the Keys. So if you guys have ever done, so the Keys are known, if you don't know, Keys are known as like the Bahamas of the United States. It's got the same climate, same look, same white sand beaches, all that sort of stuff, but it's the U.S., right? And there's just like the Bahamas has like 7,000 islands. We've got all these dozens and dozens and dozens of keys. I don't know, there are probably hundreds of them. And the southernmost western part, because it kind of it curves westward. The southernmost westward island is Key West, and then you can go and touch the southernmost part of the United States there. And I did a video last year from there, and yeah, that's what we did. We just traveled down the Keys, and we stopped at Key Largo, which is their largest island, as I understand, right below the mainland of Florida. We stayed a few days there, and then what you can do is then you travel to all the different kind of neighboring keys, and went to a lot of parks and walked around and went to the beaches, and I burn a lot, so I have to put the I have to load up on sunscreen and put the towel over me, but it's so lovely and it's so relaxing. And so, I'll do a couple of videos in the morning, and then we just have the afternoon to spend together. And then we went down to Marathon. We spent a few days there. And then we spent Valentine's Day in Key West. We really like Key West. I know it's definitely a party town and so forth, but it's we like the city island. It's an island city basically. So we had a lovely time. So thank you for asking. It was really wonderful. It was really cool to bring you guys with us on that. Liberty Bowl, not defending the prince, but what does it say about the UK when they'll arrest a member of the royal family, but won't even acknowledge roving, grooming gangs of foreigners in their own soil? Amen, Liberty Bowl. No, that's phenomenal. That's an excellent question. Have you seen the memes? Right? Was it Babylon Bee? Prince Andrew, he converts to Islam so as to be able to so he can continue to rape young women. It's a terrible thing, but that's basically what it said. Is that the only way you can avoid being held liable for heinous actions is if you're a part of one of these approved, supposedly aggrieved identity groups. No, I'm with you. I think what happened with that gang rape grooming scandal all over the UK, where we've done some videos on it. I've read the reports, and a big shout out to Matt Goodwin, the scholar who's synthesized a lot of the data. And it goes back, to 2014? Was that the first trials? And 80-90%, even more of the defendants were all Pakistani Muslim. And one town, you'll have a single town of like 100,000 people, and like 1% of the girls there were raped. All white, all working class, forgotten, right? They slipped through the cracks for some reason. We all know the reason. White working class have been abandoned by the liberal elite, but in both parties. It wasn't just Labor. The Tories were in power the vast period of time there. So no, this is the horror of multiculturalism. This is the horror of progressive realism. This is the and the UK is experiencing this big time. Piers Morgan got a lot of pushback. I don't know if you saw that with when he was interviewing Megyn Kelly after the Bad Bunny Super Bowl halftime show. And he's like, "What's the problem? What's the problem? Just let him do it. What's the problem?" And Megyn Kelly's like, "Because this is America, and in America we freaking speak English. This is crazy. It's good. You don't have an official language. It's not any of your constitution or your laws." And that's my bad. I sound like a drunk whenever I use my British accent. And she pushed back and she said, "Piers, we are not going to allow what happened in America, or what happened in the UK happen to America. What is the number one most popular baby name in the UK right now?" And of course, we all know the answer, right? Muhammad. And she said, "We're not doing that here." And you've had, and again, it's very interesting because Jordan Peterson has a very passionate soliloquy that he gave to Piers Morgan, who I see in many ways as sort of a bridge between UK culture, UK pop culture, and American pop culture. And I mean it at the political level as well. I don't know what to make of Piers. Maybe you guys can let me know. he seems to play both sides, and he's I'm Trump's best friend, MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. It's like, oh, but what's the matter with Bad Bunny? And what's the problem? What's the problem with it? So all of a sudden he gets all progressive realist and so on. And what Peterson said was, the Western world is watching what Britain is doing it to itself, and they're aghast. They're aghast at the kind of ideological brainwashing you have to go through to only be able to think in progressive frames of reference. So progressive realism is rooted in what's called emancipatory politics. And progressive realism, when all said and done, is just the idea that the arc of history inevitably bends towards a left-wing vision of social justice. Emancipatory politics is the notion that the government has to be used to protect and liberate oppressed groups from the cultural, social, political, economic means of oppression. That's emancipatory politics. So only a just government, the only truly just government, has the liberation of victim groups as its primary goal, and it does that by suppressing any and all dynamics, social, political, economic, cultural, even racial, gender dynamics that they see as behind that oppression. And so what ends up happening is when you have a true victim group, like young white working class girls, and we're talking by the hundreds of thousands, right? Some estimates are that there were over 1 million victims in this altogether, in these rapes. When you have a real victim group, but that doesn't come under the guise of emancipatory political identities, but comes under the oppressor identity, you get nothing. You are person non grata. You get nothing. They're giving you nothing. Yeah, well, they'll go through a trial. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, we got to do that. But don't you dare blame the group. Don't you dare do that. No. So it's just this insanity of, in emancipatory politics, legitimate groupthink when it comes to supposedly oppressed identities. So whenever a crime is committed against a member of that group, a racial group, a sexual group, gender group, whatever, whenever a crime is committed against that group, especially by the supposed oppressor class, white, male, Christian, then my heavens, this is a perfect example of why we need emancipatory politics. This is a perfect example of why we need it, because these groups are under assault. They are being oppressed. They are being stigmatized. We have to do everything we can to stop this. And now it's time for you to think about your participation in this, viewer who happens to be white. Now you have to think about how you are contributing to this systemically unjust racist society. Anytime a member of a protected group becomes a victim of crime from a supposed oppressor, the whole thing is all about group identity. But you flip it. Anytime a member of the supposed oppressor is a victim from one of those identity groups, you can't blame the group. How dare that's xenophobic of you. That's very racist of you. How dare you? How dare you? So you saw it. I mean, and it's stunning, and that's the thing. It flips back to those emancipatory frames. So here you have young, beautiful, innocent, white, working class children, basically, right? I think most of them are around pubescent, maybe some were prepubescent, but getting ravaged. The majority of which, as I understand, are Pakistani Muslims. And if you even so much as insinuate that this may have something to do with this group of Pakistani Muslims that we have in our country, that we've opened our borders to, then all of a sudden now you victimize the victimized. Now, how dare you? How dare when you say, wait a minute, no, there's something about this group that seems to lend itself to this kind of behavior. All of a sudden now, your concern is pathologized, and the group of concern, this oppressed group that appears to be acting in very horrific ways, all of a sudden now they become the victims again. You've always got to have the victim-victimizer, oppressed-oppressor dynamic, always. That can never, ever change. And so I'm with you. I mean, I'm going off on it, but Liberty Bowl, I think you're bringing up something very important, and it's a tragedy in UK politics and UK culture that they've gone so far in the direction of emancipatory politics and progressive realism, so as to abandon justice for those beautiful girls. Hi, Q. Good to hear from you, my friend. When they say socialist, we all know they mean communist. They know that we know this, so why do they continue to lie to us? Yeah. I mean, that's Hayek's thesis. Friedrich Hayek, in his Road to Serfdom, is that socialism brands itself as voluntary. So we're all going to voluntarily comply in the end. Right? The warmth of collectivism is something we're all going to kumbaya to. And then when those in charge find out people naturally end up doing what's best for themselves and for their loved ones and for their neighbors, and they really don't care to comply with this nonsense socialism, then they crack down and they make everything mandatory, and then you end up getting a kind of communism. I don't know why they lie. I mean, look, socialists, everything in a socialist vision of life, by definition, is political, right? There's no issue, as Mamdani would say, there is no issue too small or too large that government is not the cure for in some way, shape, or form. So in effect, what he's saying is everything is political, including the truth. So whatever propaganda can be used in the service of pushing the regime, as it were, and the ideology, they do it. Joan, I saw a post last night claiming that tariffs have cost families $1,000 so far. I'm skeptical. Your thought? No, Joan, I don't see it at all. That was the theory. The theory was that inevitably retailers are going to have to raise their price. That's not what's happened. It's certainly not happening in the energy industry, and there's all kinds of tariffs within the energy industry. No, it just didn't happen. Inflation is down. The price and the cost of goods is down from where it was, say, in terms of adjusted inflation, of where it was just months ago. So no, it's just not true. Again, they'll do whatever they can to try to convince you to turn on Trump. That's their goal, and it's. But economically, as I understand it, tariffs do not they can, but they do not necessarily affect cost of goods. Dr. Z, what's your take on the current state of Australian politics? Anthony, have you asked me that before? I think you might have. I can't remember. Somebody did. Thank you for that. I to be honest with you, I haven't followed down under in a number of years. You had some pretty exciting contests. A few years back, it looked like you had a rising right that was infiltrating your mainstream Conservative Party. But right now, it does seem that Australian politics they have hit a certain paralysis, certain status quo paralysis. It's fascinating how they play off of China and the United States. China for trade, majority of their trades with China, but the United States for security. That's interesting to me. Something kind of comparable to the Philippines. But to be honest with you, I haven't. If you're asking me about the latest and the Asiatic, geopolitics, I haven't. Outside of that, I haven't been the ASEAN and so on. I haven't been following it, to be honest with you. That's no fault to Australia. It's a fault of mine of just being being limited of what I can pay attention to. Well, then Crazy Bear, Casey Kasem was treated better than McConnell. Casey Kasem was treated better than McConnell. I have to think about that one. Wild and crazy. Cody, do you think we'll ever know all Epstein info? Do you think someone within the government will have the guts to copy release unredacted documents? Good question. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think we're learning a lot. Will we learn it all? No, probably not. That's not how it works when something has been so classified. But I think we're learning a lot, and I think we've discovered that Epstein was he was a plant. He was given money by international intelligence agencies. He did have connections with the Mossad in Israel. It's not right or wrong. I'm just letting you know this is just the connections here. He had connections with them, and because we don't know how he made his money. You remember, Epstein was a high school math teacher in New York. Okay, we don't. How the heck did he make his money? And then who was the guy? Was it? I can't remember. With the CEO, he ended up becoming a broker for, and that's where he supposedly made all his money. Yeah, nonsense. He got a real pretty penny. He got to live high off the hog of deep state money, and then his job was to get the world's elite, both political and financial elite, corporate elite, in and even media elite, you name it, in compromising situations, catch them on film and video, pictures, all that good stuff, and with underage girls, and then he could blackmail them, but he wasn't blackmailing them according to his will. He was blackmailing them according to the will. He was a surrogate of these deeper international deep state ties, and it caught up with him, in the end, which they probably knew in the end that would happen. But Trump knew that. Trump got that. I think Trump understood that, and so he turned him in. We found that out. He was basically an FBI informant in the early 2000s and turned in Epstein and gave a lot of eyewitness evidence. So it's what a lot of people don't realize. Left wing doesn't seem to even give a nod to, is all the evidence shows that pretty much every time we see him with Epstein, he's gathering information. Trump is actually gathering information for the FBI, and he did, and we have the record. He turned him in. So that's basically what we know, and then we're finding out who got caught into that web. And of course, monarchy got caught up in that web, as we now know. But I have to say, and of course, Bill Gates and a number of others, Larry Summers, a former Treasury Secretary under Obama. But I got to be honest, though, thus far, there's more to be seen, but thus far, that web didn't get cast as far as we thought. That's the evidence. I'm just going by the evidence of what we have. The web didn't go as far as we thought. We thought this was going to take down pretty much everybody. And we have yet to see Hillary's and Bill's testimony, which could be pretty devastating. That might be the missing piece. We'll see. I would not be surprised if they sang as a way of, getting some immunity here. But it does not appear that the web snagged all the world leaders we thought it would. But again, it remains to be seen. But that's the basic structure. So he was a plant by international deep state forces, very nefarious forces, who deliberately used him to put the world's leaders and the world's wealthy in compromising situations so as to be able to control them. Franz, would you be fair to say that the drug boat strikes in the Caribbean were target practice and preparation for the Iranian Navy? Could be, Franz, absolutely. They're very popular, remember. It turns out people, even Mark Mitchell, who's tend to have soured on Trump a bit of late, of Rasmussen, even he's saying, blowing up narco-terrorist boats in the Caribbean turns out to be very, very popular from a civilizationalist vantage point. We don't mind the military usage in our backyard. It's again, there is a risk Trump is taking. He knows it with Iran. He has to be a little careful that doesn't turn out to be at least perceived as a Bush 2.0. Courageous, will the Supreme Court be tagging birthright citizenship? Can voter ID be fixed on local and national level? Can Virginia be saved? Hey, Courageous, this is unfair. You're sneaking in all these. Dems have full control of the say Dems having full control of the state. Yeah. Could Trump send ICE to Virginia? Anti-ICE stance. Okay. Yeah. So I'm skeptical. I was skeptical on the tariffs. I was 50-50 on the tariffs, and I remain skeptical on birthright citizenship. I think birthright citizenship is going to stay. I think it's insane. I think it's nutty. I don't know what kind of country even thinks this way, but I have a feeling it's going to stay. I think the Supreme Court's going to keep it. Can voter ID be fixed on? Well, of course, on a local level, of course, national level, yes. If Thune fails in the Senate, Trump is going to he's going to impose voter ID by executive order, and then let the Democrats fight in the courts the single most popular political issue in the country. Can Virginia be saved? Eventually, yes. Virginia can be saved. Politics is dynamic. It's not stagnant. It seems stagnant, but Trump, there are two deportations that are happening. There's the illegal migrant deportations out of the country, and there is administrative state and deep state deportations out of D.C. And the vast majority of them living in Nova, they're going to eventually move out. And when they move out, Nova can start, because that's the shift in Virginia. What happened is a relatively purple or slightly bluish region, Nova, ended up going radically blue. That's what happened. And so the margin of left-wing commitment among white-collar, college-educated, oftentimes, single men, women, professional, going full woke, and that's largely because of these human resource programs that Obama had set up that have been bringing in all this DEI training, and it's worked on them. And they got it in the universities as well, and their colleges as well. As long as the margin of Democrat victory is around 10% in Nova, the rest of rural and Western Virginia, deep red Virginia, could overcome that. But the moment it started hit that margin starts hitting 20%, starts doubling, forget it. They can't do it anymore. So as soon as they start clearing out and their numbers begin to dwindle and a different demographic starts to settle in, it'll go back to purple. But it's going to take time before it does. And, Spamberger and a radical, tax raising and so forth and trans agenda. And I have no question that's going to contribute to it. There was a massive backlash against the Democrats in 2021. There'll be another one coming soon. Don't worry. And then could Trump send ICE? Yes, of course. He could send ICE wherever he wants. Anna, why is Tucker crying about being questioned in Israel when the Australian guy was questioned in the United States for trying to visit Billy's house that was on stolen? Oh my heavens. I love that. Yeah. Was he questioned for doing that? Why am I forgetting the Australian channel? I love them. I subscribe to them on YouTube. Ice, is it Ice TV? I forget. But I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Tucker and Israel and all of this sort of stuff. Again, I just we're living in a time, we're living in a massive transition. And in a transition, taboos from the old era dissipate. They fall apart. So things you weren't really allowed to talk about in the old era, you get to talk about now. And then a number of personalities on our side found that the more they push talking about the old taboos and violating the old taboos, the bigger their audience. Again, I'm not saying this is necessarily for I shouldn't. I did imply that right there. I'm thinking of somebody else right now, but just the bottom line is that the more you transgress taboos in a transitory period, you will garner a larger audience. That's going to happen. But it could be just bottom line for Tucker. He's just, he's very concerned about the inordinate influence that the Jewish lobby, as they're called, or Israeli lobby in Washington, D.C., the number one, single most well-financed and effective lobby, possesses over our Senate and House leaders and our presidency. And so, John Mearsheimer, the University of Chicago, geopolitical theorist. Yeah, he wrote the definitive book on the Jewish lobby back in 90s, I said. And he just said, just it's hurting us. It's hurting us in the Middle East. It's hurting the Middle East by us just having this sort of knee-jerk reaction of we're always pro-Israel no matter what. And Tucker's very concerned about that. And in a rising civilizationalist world where the old Cold War alliances are now being freshly questioned, that this is just a very natural thing to occur. But in terms of being held, questioned by Israel, detained and all, I have no idea. ACC, is that it? God bless. Thank you so much. God bless your channel. Thank you, ACC. Thank you. Very, very kind of you. I hope I'm saying your tag correctly. God bless you. Unitani glue. I'd have to think about that. Have you looked into the Pope creating a unified religious center for Catholics, Muslims, and Jews? No, any other Christianity groups were excluded. Oh, okay. No, I haven't. Would it be Catholics, Muslims, and Jews? I'd be surprised if Orthodox were not allowed in there, because he's been making a lot of strides to try to create reunify the two branches of government. I mean, the Pope could do whatever he wants. That's his thing. There is there is a view that an Abrahamic civilization could unite world order. Yeah, there is that view. That the three great Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, could come together with so much commonality historically, theologically, and so forth, being rooted again in the identity of Abraham. It's very, very important part of it. You have to have identity as part of it. So I'm sure that's where he's going with it. Whether or not he would be the best one to do it or not, that would be other people's assessment. Cordius, sorry for asking so much in the above. Oh, there you go. No problem, Cordius. Yeah, I'm like, hey, you're sneaking in like 4 or 5 questions, man. Come on. 2-question limit. Nah, we don't have any limits here. It's all right. I shouldn't have said that, actually. Everyone's like, okay, boom, 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 rapid fire. Thank you, Blossom, for the super chat. Very kind of you. And thank you, 11Z Anderman. Thank you, sir. Franz, I'd like to see you on your civilizationalist bingo card. Did you have Asmongold as a populist thought leader. Actually, I did. I love Asmongold. My son got me into I first came to find out who he was through my son, who's a bit of a gamer. And but yeah, that's populism. That's populism. The future of the country is in the hands of the people, not the permanent political class. And Asmongold is a perfect embodiment of that. He has a very keen sense of intuition. His intuitive sense, right? I'm not getting a sense that he's reading the latest studies on multipolarity or anything along those lines, or nationalist populism. He has this extraordinary intuitive sense of what's happening in the world, and he gets it. He gets that we're moving away from an old liberal, industrialized elite age where a managerial class exercised unassailed expertise and authority in all matters of domestic and international relation. He sees that as done. That's over. He gets that. And again, this is where the techno-populism comes in. He gets that the new technologies, particularly the rise of cyber civilization and digital life and so forth, and our hyperconnectivity bypasses that world in the same way that texting and email bypasses the old post office. They're still there. We may even have to use them every once in a while, but they are almost entirely irrelevant to our day-to-day lives. He gets that. And then he gets this sort of disruption of that in the world. And that's what I really appreciate about it. He doesn't just comment on domestic affairs. He also comments on what's going on around the world. And he has a very keen sense of what's happening in terms of a big picture disruption, moving from an older liberal age to a much more populist civilizationalist age. So yeah, so I'm with you. It would not have been on my bingo card, but it belongs there for sure. He belongs there for sure. RoboGuy, Trump goes to war with Iran, but does nothing about the Islamification of America. I don't think he's taking it seriously. Wow. They're two different things, dude. They're two different things. Islamification of America let's go backwards. Islamification of America has a long way to go. Okay, we're not seeing the Islamification of America. We may be seeing the Islamification of urban areas. Yeah, definitely, because of the rise of Muslim leaders inside the Democrat Party. So Ilhan Omar, Tlaib, Mamdani. And then what they're ironically doing, particularly Mamdani, and then of course Hamtramck in Dearborn, Michigan. What they're ironically doing is they're opening up space in the name of inclusivity and civil rights and human rights. They're opening up space to basically bring in a very favorable environment for Sharia law. That's exactly what they, calls to prayer in the morning and everything like that. And even banning dog ownership in certain areas and regions because they're considered unclean in Islamic code. So our cities are going to get more and more Islamified as long as wokeness opens up space through this radical notion of oppressed groups and civil rights and identity politics. As long as it opens up space for Islamic candidates, and they tend to be, the wealthier, from a wealthier families, and they tend to be very articulate, very educated, very indoctrinated, they can speak left-wing ease to blow away everybody in the Democrat primaries, and then when they get into power, ironically, they more and more abandon the Democrats, and they Islamify their districts, as it were. So ironically, it's another way that the world's going right. It's another way that the world's going conservative, but it's an Islamic version of conservatism, which, yeah, doesn't fit with the faith, family, and freedom model that's so unique to the United States. So I think it's a problem, but it's nowhere near the problem that it is, for example, in Europe. I don't think they're above 3% of the population at this point. They're still spread out quite a bit. And then the problem that we're facing more is corruption. So like the Somali issues in Minneapolis, and that's getting cracked down for sure. What's going on with Iran's a whole different story. With the question with Iran is this the time to strike a nation that is hell-bent on getting a nuclear weapon so as to be able to dictate policy in the Middle East? If they get a bomb, they will be able to dictate. North Korea could have, if they weren't engulfed more or less by China on the one side, and then the United States back Japan, on the other, as it were, and Russia as well, by the way. With Russia literally bordering very close, or I think, yeah, it does. You could take a train from North Korea to Russia. So North Korea is more or less sandwiched in by nuclear powers. Iran would be a sole stark nuclear power in a region that will enable it to basically call the shots in that region. And the United States is basically committed, given their hostility to the United States. They've committed to the fact that they don't want to do that. Saudi Arabia doesn't want that. Oman doesn't want that. Oman doesn't want that. The UAE doesn't want that. Qatar doesn't want that. Egypt doesn't want that. Jordan doesn't want that. Israel doesn't want. So it's not just Israel. This is a problem where it's just the Jews. The Jews are control. Iran is. I get it. I mean, if it were Saudi Arabia, maybe I get it. But Iran is a problem not just for the Jews. Iran is a problem for Sunni Muslims in the region as well. Iran is an issue, and Trump just sees Iran weaker now than they've ever been, and perhaps this is the opportunity to take them out. Diane, Dr. Professor Steve, or dear Professor Steve, what do you think about why Tucker Carlson would lie so awful against Israel when Tucker had scheduled his interview in a private hangar inside Ben Gurion airport? I don't know if he lied or not. I don't know the specifics of it, and I just couldn't answer it. I think, look, in the end, Tucker's made it clear he is very concerned that Israel is way too much. The Israeli government has way too much sway over American foreign policy in the region, or just in general. And he's just thinking in the rise of a civilizationalist era, we don't need that anymore. That's not necessarily necessary anymore. We should be on just as good terms with Arab and Islamic regimes as we are with the Israeli regime. That, as I understand, that is his issue. And boy, the pushback he's gotten from Mark Levin and Laura Loomer and so forth. It's been rough, but that's par for the course in this transitionary period. It's known as post-normality. And one of the key characteristics of post-normality is chaos and contradiction. So there's going to be all this kind of shrapnel flying around, cultural shrapnel in the process of as things begin to settle in a more civilizationalist world. But I don't know the specifics behind why or what really happened there. Michael, I know you don't approve of dooming, but it is extremely demoralizing when the highest court in the land sides with foreigners and big business interests against the express will of the people, especially when they never stopped in during the insane government overreach during COVID. No, that's not true. Yes, they did. They pushed back on that. or the 2020 stolen election. Good point. They didn't do jack shit with that one. That's for sure. Something needs to be done once and for all to rein in these out of control judges and put them in their place once and for all. Yeah, I hear you, Michael. No, I don't think you're dooming there. I don't sense it. I sense a little, definitely some disappointment, frustration. Sure, you're going to have that. No question. Absolutely. So no, that's not fair with COVID. They reverse basically every executive order from Biden, for the exception of some military and healthcare mandates that they found precedent for in history. But like OSHA, occupational health, safety and health, passing mandates that if you're part of a company with 100 or more employees, you have to get, you are required to get vaccinated. That was insane. Talking about an overreach. And again, none of these people were elected. It's all part of the administrative state. But no, I'm with you. It is frustrating. But again, this Supreme Court has been giving Trump almost entirely win after win after win. I think there was one previous loss prior to that. Other than that, it was all wins. We're talking like 25 out of 26 decisions. So, yep, this is a rough one. But the good news is there is recourse to it. Like I said, I gave you some of those U.S. code sections that Trump can use to keep the tariffs in place. So, but it is frustrating that the court could come in and just sort of say, nope, I know you voted for it, but screw you. No, maybe we need to just say screw you. No question. All right, Blossom, Dr. C, I'm MAGA and I live in New York. I work and live amongst the blue-haired freaks. Is there a way to connect with other conservatives on your platform? Yeah, sure. Well, where are you? Are you in the city? So anyway, you could do it through our Insiders Club. So we've got thousands of members of our Insiders Club that you might want to. I don't know, Josh, can you flash the Insiders Club address and you can join? There we are. Right, but we can't see it. It's a fight.turleytalks.com/join. There you go. Fight.turleytalks.com/join. And that's a great group. And we get together every Monday night for live Q&A. You guys, you get to ask me your questions directly, and we get to chat and all. And there's a lot of people from all over the world, but obviously mostly here from the United States. So I'm sure you're going to be able to find some people in that group. We also have a private social media platform where you can post stuff censorship free. So there you go. Pat P, is there a difference between Augusta Gold and Gold Co? There is. Augusta, it's the same basic model as I understand it. But Augusta Gold, I have to say, I felt they were more our peeps. They were more patriot oriented. They took a lot. This is from the customer service that we heard. They take a lot more time with you to kind of, walk you through the steps and guide you and help you. And in a way that Gold Co did not. So I love Gold Co. God bless them. But Augusta is it's a bit of a smaller company and same business model and everything in terms of rolling over a portion, whatever you want. It doesn't have to be at all, whatever you want, of your 401k or IRA into gold. And they're just so cool, and they're just so helpful, and they're just so personal, and they just want you to succeed because they know if you succeed, they succeed. But they're willing to give you that personalized time. And that's what we love them. And so I know some of the guys in Augusta Precious Metals, and they're just awesome, and they're totally 100% MAGA and 100% us, and they understand multipolarity and civilizationalism and all that great stuff. Robo guy, couldn't Trump ignore the SCOTUS ruling? Lincoln, even Biden did so. No, he could. He could. I don't know if we're living in an era where he could get away with that. And again, he doesn't have to. There are other, like Jonathan Turley, my namesake, has pointed out, there are other avenues he can take to pursue tariffs. So that's not this. He took a certain avenue that was the easiest and most effective. I don't think he's going to have a problem rolling it over and transferring it over to these other options. And that's it. All right, guys, you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and I will see you on Monday, if not before. If the weather's nice, I might be out on my back porch. It's just been so horrid of late here, so cold. Ugh. But if anything arises, I'll be the first to do a quick video and give you a good shout out. Love you guys. God bless.